Hi guys, and welcome back from Carly at the Herbothicary. Really good to see you guys again. If you're new to the channel or like the videos, please show your support by hitting like and subscribe down below. So on October 25th, my middle baby decided she wanted to be a dead bride for Halloween, and I was just about to start a 5-day work week, so I wouldn't have time to go shopping for a dress or buy material. So I decided I would try and knock one up. Now, first job was to get her measurements, something she found absolutely hilarious. Then we needed to find some fabric, and luckily I had this really pretty off-white curtain with lace at the top, and I thought we'd, turn that into a dress. So the measurements I needed were around her shoulders, around her bust, around her waist and the widest point. Also the measurement from her shoulder to her waist and from her shoulder to the ground. And then it was time to design the costume. I decided to use the lacy section around her bust and give it a half circle skirt and long cut sleeves or wide sleeves. I was also going to use both the lining and the front of the dress to make it warmer because October is freezing. I then drew up the pattern pieces I'd need with the measurements. I'll be cutting the half circle skirt on the fold, so to get the measurement for the pattern, I took her centimeter waist measurement, divided it by 2, then times that by 10, and divided it by 15.5 and got 20.32. Because I'm going to I'm going to ruffle it at the front, I rounded it up to about 20.5. So I took that measurement from the corner of my paper and pivoted my ruler round to measure 20.5 and then drew the arc. Now I also then took her shoulder to toe measurement or ground measurement, and that was 100 centimeters. I minused this from that, which gave me around 80, and then I measured from the line I'd made and measured 80-ish around. I am cutting it long for her because we're going to put zigzags in. Joined up all of those dots in an arc and then added in my seam allowance. Then onto the top, I measured out her waist, halved it and did the front. Now the back I'm doing slightly longer in the center section so that it can overlap. Then added 2 centimeter seam allowance to the top of the arms and the sides. Now for the back, I will be making it slightly wider in the middle so it can overlap, and I will be cutting 2 layers of the thick for each side on the back, and then on the front I'll have 1 layer of the thick, and then the second layer will be the bit with the lace across the bust. For the hoop skirt section, I folded my fabric in half as I will be cutting this on the fold in order to get the half circle pattern. But this I will also be doing 1 longer layer of the thick lining and then a shorter layer to overlap it of the thinner one with the lace, although I won't be using the lace as that's all being used in the top. I did have to pin my pattern piece down on this one as the fabric was a lot lighter and moved around quite a lot. I also added about a centimeter extra seam allowance on the back where I'll sew the skirts together and cut this one slightly longer than the pattern piece as well, just not quite as long as the other bit. I then had all my pattern pieces except for the sleeves, as I'm going to do them last, all cut and ready to go. Threaded my machine and it didn't work. So some of the sewing in this video didn't record as I had to go use my neighbor's sewing machine and couldn't record in hers. So it's day 2 and I kept my poor neighbour up till 2 o'clock in the morning sewing and chatting. All I managed to get done was the top layer and the bottom layer of the top sewn together. So I sewed them right sides together and then turned them inside out and pressed them. Don't forget to snip the little V's in the curvy bits and take off the corners so that it sits nice and flat. Now I didn't have my little model to try it on this morning as she was asleep when I finished last night and she was asleep when I had to leave for work this morning. But a good friend came to the rescue and lent me her sewing machine, and I was lucky enough to be able to bring it to work with me today and work on my project during my break. And I hit another snag. The top is way too big. That's what happens when you don't have a model to try it on to. So it's about 16 centimeters in total too long. So I'm going to take off with an extra seam allowance, so make that 14. So I'm going to measure 7 on either side, make sure that my armholes are still going to be big enough for her arms to go in, and I will sew it up there rather than right at the edges. Now with that all pinned up, I took a break from the top and decided to sew the sides of the skirts together. So I'm going to line this up, pin it, cut off that bit of excess because it looks like I made the bottom one a lot bigger than the top one. So once that's done, it's over to the sewing machine to sew those sides up together. Now I'm doing this the same way that I did the top, as I will then be turning the whole thing inside out and pressing it. And doing it on the floor is not the most comfortable process, as I'm having to control the presser foot with my left knee. So I flipped the skirts over and repeated this on the other side, but left the bottom open for now so I can turn it right way round. But first of all, I cut off the corners and cut little V notches all around the waistline so that it lies flat. Then turn it right way round, ready for pressing later, and it's now time to sew up those sides of the top. Remembering to leave that extra large seam allowance of around 6 centimeters on either side. Do this on both sides of the top and then sew up the top of the arms. Unfortunately, I didn't get the next bit on film, but I sewed up the sides of the skirt after I'd pressed it. I then lined up the middle of the skirt, or middle front of the skirt, with the middle front of the top, right side to right side, and sewed those two pieces together. So back at home now, and I finally got to try the dress onto my little model. I also missed out the bit where I attached Velcro to the back once I knew where to put it, and now it was to make the arms. I did need to make a pattern for this first of all. Oh, my kitty came to say hello. There's my little model, and in order to do this, I lined the dress up on the pattern piece with the top section on the top of my pattern paper, and then just going to draw the shape of the armhole. As this is only half, we will be cutting it on the fold. All we need to do then is measure to make sure that the bicep is going to be wide enough, but as we know the dress fits, this armhole should be perfect. We then want to add a little lip for the seam allowance. Then we need the entire length of her arm from her shoulder to as long as we want it to be. I had this one at about 60 centimeters, and then work out the width that you would like the sleeve. This one's going to have quite a bell drape to it, so I've made it quite wide, and then you just join those two lines up. Armholes. We then cut this pattern, remember to cut it on the fold, sew those sides together, and then insert it into the dress. I then had the tedious task of cutting all the rips into the skirt and the armholes, but once that was done, it was time for the fun part. So I set the little lady to the awesome task of covering her dress in fake blood. And the final finished project. Here is my beautiful little dead bride, and showing off for her friends. As you can tell, she absolutely loves it. Hope you guys found that fun like I did, and useful, picked up maybe a tip or two, another item to go and research in your own time. Again, thank you guys for coming back to the Apothecary. It was great to see you again. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.